What's up, Rockstars? Welcome to my review of Final Titan by NerdLab. This is a brawling card game that plays quick, that's a lot of fun. It's a prototype. There were some oddities, there were some things I loved. We're going to talk about it all right now. Okay, now do note, obviously, that this is a prototype and it is going to be a crowdfunded game that I imagine then will have nice retail presence just because of its size and stuff like that. And it's got Richard Garfield attached to it. There's a whole host of like checkboxes that's checking for retail. But for the crowdfunded thing, it is linked down in the description below. So feel free to check it out, see if it's something that would interest you. There was going to be a lot more than what you're seeing right here. That being said, what I have is actually quite good. Now, I'll explain briefly like how to play, and honestly, it doesn't take that long. I was able to explain it in just a couple of minutes, and we started playing. People got it right away. Nobody even had any questions afterwards. Essentially, you have a group of titans, and then you have one that is the titan, right? And then you have to have somebody pick themselves as a challenger. So it says, oh, I have the runesmith here, and he's got 7 health and 4 speed and 1 armor, no charges, he's the Titan. And then it goes to my next person and it says, do you want to challenge them? And they can either be a coward or they can be a hero. So maybe they were a coward, so they're not going to do that. So what they're going to do is they have these upgrade cards like healing potion and a mirror image and a sharpshooter or whatever. And they're going to have to say, you know what? No, not me. I'm not fighting that guy. He looks scary. And then this next person's going to go and they're going to be like, well, you know what? Not am I going to challenge them with my skinwalker, but because other people were cowards, I'm going to take this and gain it, right? And so then what you do is you have these people here, and then you go and you essentially upgrade your person, right? With, you know, whatever, right? In this case, mirror image and power potion, right? And that's now my guy. And then they would do theirs, and essentially now they're both buffed, and then we fight. And you fight by rolling this big old die here. It's got symbols plus a blink. The symbols go to different attacks. Essentially, you have 4 different attacks. You can also gain a charge. If you gain a charge while you already have a charge, you do your ultimate. Some people have an ultimate form that they permanently change into. Think like a Super Saiyan Goku. Or they have an ultimate that they do like an ultimate attack. Think like typical, 2D fighters, right? And so that's kind of what's going on here. That's the gist of it. You go until there's only one final Titan remaining. Now, if, let's say, my runesmith was successful and the skinwalker dies, he remains damaged. However, the next challenger will come in full health. So it's quite rare that you go through any more than 2, maybe 3 before that guy's so weak, he's dead. Somebody's going to kill him. It's going to be fine, right? But that's kind of the idea. And you just go around in order like that, which means that all the battles are 2v2. However, the battles go very quick. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now that the mechanics are mostly out of the way, that's most of it, right? I'm going to go ahead and talk about some things I loved. First of all, when it comes to card games, and I'm counting this as a card game, any game that has a card game, to me, needs to have fun little mechanics. It's like the Magic the Gathering stuff, right? The text on it needs to do something interesting or fun. Combine that with, say, like a skirmish game. In a skirmish game, you're kind of like deck building or army building, right? Where you're going through your army and you're trying to see synergies between them and different combinations and stuff like that. This has both of those because you are picking these. Typically, you're drafting them from, like a pool of options. But you're essentially saying, wouldn't it be interesting if, for instance, I had the Skinwalker and the Mind Bug? Because what do, right? So the Skinwalker just does a little bit of damage. He does some poison, right? He does some rerolls or some extra action, stuff like that, right? But not a lot of damage. Instead, if you get to his ultimate, so in other words, you gain a charge, right? You rolled that, and you roll it again, and you gain another charge. You go and do his ultimate. Says, swap me with a champion on my bench, right? So let's say we swap it with the Mind Bug here, right? Okay. And then it says, perform its ultimate or ultimate form. So I just swapped him with that. And so it turns out the Skinwalker was a Mind Bug. And the Mind Bug ultimate is return me to my bench. I win the fight, take control of the foe. So then you return that, and then, oh my gosh, look at that. Not only did I win, but now I have the runesmith. That sort of combo, totally possible, right? Very kind of fun to do that. And honestly, a lot of them do a lot of interesting things. Even this runesmith here, if you do its ultimate, or if you roll a punch, it says give an armor token to a champion on my bench. The bench are the people you haven't used yet, right? So you can start giving these armor tokens that they normally wouldn't, right? If they have none. So you can't like spam them, but you can at least get 3 down there, hopefully. So it might be smart to lead with the Runesmith if it's on your team, just because then you can start giving your other guys armor, right? But it goes so much more than that. For instance, this guy right here, we called the Sandworm, otherwise known as a Dune Worm, one punch worm, because what he does is 1 damage if you roll a blue, 1 damage if you roll a green, 1 damage if you roll a yellow, so in other words, nothing, or 20 damage if you roll a punch. So if you roll that punch, you're pretty much one-hit killing anybody you're attacking. Then you have an ultimate form where essentially their green now does plus 19 damage, so they have half of the time they're doing 20 and plus 8 speed, because one of the issues with the worm is it has a speed of 2, so it's very slow. You're not going to be acting first unless it's in its ultimate form. Its ultimate form, very scary. 50% chance pretty much of it just one-shotting you, and pretty fast as well. But you have to get it to that first, right? And so maybe you do, maybe you don't. There are so many options like this, so many different interesting things. Sobek here, for instance, has his little passive ability. When I survive damage from an attack, I deal the same amount back. So did you hit him? Well, now he's damaging you back. And his ultimate has him drain 6 life. So 6 life comes from you into him. He actually heals up, right? He's not doing a huge amount of damage except for his punches, but those are healing him as well. And additionally, again, he can deal any damage you deal to him right back. There's stuff like the Kitsune here. 1 damage across the board. Not possible to do any more than 1 damage, right? So not very good. However, her passive is I counter the blue and the green. So if somebody rolls a blue or green, you actually counter that, you receive no damage. Doesn't matter what they rolled, right? And in fact, when that happens, she gains a charge, okay? So then she's charged up. If she does that twice, she performs her ultimate, which is instant death, 1-hit kill, she wins the fight. So she's doing no damage and then suddenly you're dead, right? That's how she plays. There are so many options like this, and it's quite thematic too. For instance, here is the 3 Musketeers with lightsabers, and they're like a mouse and a fox and a tiger person, whatever. And one of the things they do is they start with 2 action tokens. What these action tokens do is they give you an additional roll. In other words, all 3 of your people are attacking because it's the 3 Musketeers, they attack together, right? So you roll for 1 and then I gained a charge. I roll for 2, I did nothing. I roll for 3, and I did nothing. That's terrible. That actually really happens. That was just a bad roll. But that's what they do, right? And then their ultimate is 3 separate attacks all at once, right? And so again, it's one of those things where it's thematically the 3 Musketeers, right? Or the lizard guy that's healing himself, or the giant worm where he either hits you or he doesn't, right? There's all sorts of things like that. The Skinwalker where he's actually somebody else, and the Mind Bug who like takes control of you, and that goes on and on and on. And there's so many different ones. Steel Force over here. He only has 6 health, right? But he reduces all damage he takes to 1. You only hurt him 1 at a time. And his ultimate, he drains 4 life, so he can actually still heal back up. So, and his damage is literally 1, 2, 3, and 4. So he's doing anywhere from 1 to 4 damage, so very variable in an attack, but it's really hard to kill him unless you do an instant kill. So that's one of the things where if you see that he's a Titan, this would be a good challenger, because it doesn't matter. She's only doing 1 damage anyway, but if you get to that ultimate, then suddenly he's dead. Doesn't matter, right? So all that kind of stuff, and that's just some of them. This is just some of them. There's actually more. I only have, I think, 45, 75 in here. There's going to be 100 at least in the campaign, in the final box. So again, feel free to check that out, see what other options are there. That is linked down below, but that is the gist of the game. That's really it. You're picking these really cool guys, and I forgot all these cards here, right? All of these things do different things as well. If they have an arc reactor, guess what? They get a different action, another action, right? So the 3 Musketeers can now have 4, right? Or the deadly aim. I may set my first roll to yellow instead of rolling the die. So if you have somebody that does a lot of damage on a yellow, maybe they do their special on a yellow, then you give them deadly aim, and suddenly you can choose yellow for your first one. You don't have to roll the die. Smoke bomb, right? I counter yellow, right? So if they have that, maybe that's good. If you were fighting somebody and they had a really strong yellow, well, and you had a smoke bomb, play that on your guy. Guess what? You now just counter pretty much their big thing here. Or +5 speed, right? Hey, I put the Sandworm there. You may think it's nothing, right? Because when you put this down here, you don't know what it is. You just know I'm buffing him, right? And then, oh, guess what? Actually, he's 7 speed. Joke's on you. Now I go first, right? Force field, where they gain an armor. Healing factor, where they heal 4 damage at the start of each fight, right? There's all of these buffs that you can play too, and you can play and multiple of them, right? It's not just one, it's not even just two. So you can really play on there. That being said, if you run out, that really sucks. Additionally, if you're out, you can't coward, because the cost of cowarding is, you know what? Boom, somebody else gets that now. No, now actually you have to fight. Hopefully you're a good hero because you're a bad coward. A lot of fun. I could go on. There's a few other things at play here, right? When it comes to like different symbols you can have above your attack that does different things, that procs different things, or you can have things that actually proc your ability, right, based off a roll. There's all sorts of different things. Fang here, for instance, right? He has just every single one of his attacks drain life, and his ultimate also drains 10 life. No matter what, he's just healing himself all the time because he's a vampire. He's like the freaking Dracula over there, right? Just really cool stuff. There's the bench power stuff where people actually do things from the bench or to the bench, so you can buff people and stuff like that. It's one of those things where each person you see, you're like, oh, that's a cool person. Oh, that's a cool person. There are no bad abilities. There are no bad cards. They're all a lot of fun. And we had a ton of fun playing it. Now, they are doing some work on this. So again, this is a prototype. I want to stress that out. For instance, there was a card I had, the War Golem, for instance. It says, instead of playing upgrade cards from the hand on me, play the top 2 upgrade cards from the deck down on me. So in other words, instead of using some of yours, he gets 2 random ones, right? Now, if those happen to be good and he happens to survive a few, then suddenly, because at the end, when you win a fight, you actually gain a card, right? And oh, look, now I have Adamant Skin, right? Freaking sweet. And so you can keep gaining cards. And so if you start with him, for instance, it can get a little kind of crazy where you just end up with a lot of cards because you're not having to spend any cards, right? Because instead of upgrading cards, you do that, right? So they're working on that to kind of fine tune that. So they're still kind of playing through this and making sure that it plays really well. That was literally the only one I felt that was like crazy. Like I felt like I won the game early on that. Everything else very tight, very smooth. Even stuff like One Punch Worm, right? Like they get weak over time. You end up killing them. You end up doing the instant kill thing. You're laying poison counters on them. So even though you died, they're gonna get poisoned to death over time. So it doesn't matter. And it's just a lot of fun. It really is. We had a blast. Okay, so you can be a coward, and that is kind of cool, and you have to play it in there. And I think for like really like strategic players, that's probably more common. However, I don't know. Either it's my group or it's this game. I feel it's a little bit of both, but nobody ever coward. Like nobody wants to. You want to fight. You want to play the game, because to be a coward is essentially to say I do not want to actively like engage in the game right now, right? Because it is just either hey, you get to fight this guy or you get to sit it out, right? Now it can be advantageous to do that. But generally, you don't want to. You want to fight. You got this cool freaking One Punch Worm. You're like, I got this. Or you know what? My Steel Force, he's going to do it just fine. You can't kill him, right? And so then maybe you get through that guy, but the next person has an instant kill. Or it just tended to flow like that. It wasn't a thing where somebody felt like they were left out very often. It wasn't a thing where somebody wiped out really quick. It was very much everybody's engaged. And additionally, the setup time super quick. As you can see, there's not a whole lot here. It plays very easily. You can play this on a coffee table and have a lot of fun with it. It can play pretty quick because you can just decide how many Titans are you doing? Are you doing 4? Are you doing 3? What is it, right? So it sets up quick. It plays quick. The fights are quick. Again, you're just rolling and doing the damage. There's not any kind of like afterwards manipulation or anything crazy like that. There's a few abilities that have you do some things, but for the most part, you're just rolling that. Boom, I did blue. Blue was 1 damage. You took 1 damage. So we're going to trade that in. We're going to put 2. I just did mine, and then you do yours, and you roll that, and you did a blue as well, and so I'm going to do 1 damage. Okay, there's my damage, and then and you do that until somebody wins, and it goes super quick. Meanwhile, everybody else is like talking about it or waiting for your ultimate to pop, especially once you get a charge. They're like, you're just one roll away from your ultimate, and then you do the ultimate, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody's involved. It didn't feel like there was downtime when 2 people were fighting. You were actively engaged the whole time. It kind of reminds me a bit, slightly, of Super Fight, if you ever played Super Fight, where I ended the game with a sore throat because of all of the shouting and all the talking and all of the, like, just fun time had, right? It ended up where I was literally kind of sore because of the ridiculous situations, because you could have your One Punch Worm that's also like armored and has a mirror image of themselves or whatever, something crazy like that. That's kind of Super Fight-ish. except with like a legit game attached to it instead of just like the judging thing. A lot of fun. Like seriously, super easy to play, super quick to play, lots of options, really, really fun there. In fact, if there was one drag on any of it, it would be the setting up of the people, right? So you come here and they have 7 health, so then you give the health, and then, and then they got the armor thing right here, right? And then maybe something happens at the beginning, so then you have to do that, right? And then you have to, give them the Titan or the Challenger card, and then you have to play down your card. The setup is probably the slowest part. It doesn't take a long time. It doesn't happen super often. There's only so many cards here, right? But it was probably the slowest that there is just getting all the health things, right? Dials might work a bit better. I don't know if they are thinking of doing dials or anything like that, but you'd only really need 2 dials anyway, and it's very quick and easy to do that and then adjust the health that way. I'd prefer that over little tokens like this personally. Just because I think it would just make it that much quicker. You essentially always have 2 dials here. You just move them around as needed. I think that works fine. In fact, you could even label 1 Titan and 1 Challenger, and then you even get rid of these, right? And you can swap them or whatever, right? So I think there's, again, this is a prototype. I think there's still some smoothness they could do to just streamline it even more, but already really, really good. All right, so I've talked about some of the highlights. I've talked about like countering, I thought was interesting. I've talked about these extra abilities you can get. The variety there is quite nice. I do wish there was more. Again, I do not have a full set. This is a prototype with a partial game in it, essentially, and I still had a lot of fun with it. So there's a lot of good variety there. The combos are really good also, of course. I will say that the ultimates felt really good, and they didn't happen very often. I appreciate that. To get the 2 charges, it's not every time that you're rolling that twice or getting it another way. Sometimes you can, but when it does, it's impactful and it feels actually worth it. None of the ultimates felt like they were like lackluster. Some are better than others, I feel, and I think that's okay because essentially that character then is playing into that, and maybe there are other stats are lacking or something like that, right? Like the Kitsune classic example, right? Very weak character except for the ultimate, and that's kind of the whole point, right? But then they gain charges a different way. So again, it's like built around that versus, hey, this is just a bonus. Guess what? You rolled that again. Well, boom, now you're just doing 3 attacks. That's still very good, right? And can actually win because none of these characters have like a huge amount of health. Like this One Punch Worm here, the Sandworm, 14 health, one of the highest, right? So again, it plays really quick. Really, really good. Had a lot of fun with it. Now, if there's one thing I'm slightly cautious about is these games like are made with variety, right? When it comes to playing this often, and because of how easy it is to get to the table, I can see playing this quite often. Even on a non-normal board game night, it's something you can fit in quick. To me, that's a lot of these card games like Magic the Gathering, stuff like that. It's a tiny little box, you can bring it with you, you can play it real quick. Hey, let's play a board game. I don't know, I'm kind of tired. Well, how about Final Titan? Yeah, I could do a couple rounds of Final Titan. Why not? You set up real quick, you're board gaming in minutes, right? So with that in mind, I can see me doing it quite often. The variety is king here then, right? Because one of the things is, yes, you're getting different combinations and you're getting different units, right? But there's not the like heavy interactions between cards like a deck-based game is. And unlike a skirmish game, you're not doing a lot of like there's not a lot of stuff beyond just the card, right? You're not doing movements, you're not doing terrain, and you're not doing this and that and all these other mechanics. It's just kind of what's on the card, you're doing that, and then that's it. And you have a deck of about 5 of people, essentially, a deck, right? With a bench and a Challenger or Titan. And so with that, I want to make sure that there's good variety. Now, again, I haven't gone through even all of this, where I've seen them all, and on top of that, there's even more. Like I said, I believe there's at least 100 coming. Again, check in the description below for the link to the campaign. Should be fine. Should be fairly cheap. Should be fairly straightforward. Plays really good. Has a lot of fun. There's not a lot of bad things there. You can even, again, change how big of a game you're playing, right? Guess what? We're only playing with 3 now. Now it's a shorter game, right? Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. This is the helper thing. It pretty much explains everything you would need to do. The rule book isn't very long. It's just it distills it down to what's important and gets rid of all the fluff, and I really appreciate it for it. It's not bogged down with system after system. It's just a whole lot of fun and a cool theme. And really, that's all I want. That's all I want. So anyway, That is Final Titan. Again, have had a blast. It was one of those games where, again, at the end, everybody's talking about it. Even afterwards, they come visit the next week. Guess what? They're still talking about, hey, remember when this happened? Remember when that happened? In fact, I was reading the box here, because I actually have a back to the prototype box, and it says right here, remember the moment. Each game creates its own memorable moments of escalating champions and failing superheroes. Now, it's funny because I read that literally when I set the box down to film this review, I didn't read that beforehand at all. And it's ironic because I already had a note about that. There are games where, because of the theme and the situation, you remember it. I remember when early on in my board gaming career when I played Star Wars Rebellion, and I still remember individual games of Star Wars Rebellion because the theme and the mechanics were in such a way to where the Jedi Wookiee having to see his Kashyyyk home planet blown up from the Death Star is something I will always remember. Even though I know that that was the second game of Star Wars Rebellion I ever played. I remember I was in the kitchen when we did it. We'd have a game table. I remember all of that because the game's theme and mechanics made, and everybody around me, it made a situation that stuck in my mind. All of the examples I said, like One Punch Man and stuff like that, the exact same thing. I remember who had them. I remember the situation. I remember the laughing. I remember the jokes. I remember it all. That's what Final Titan does for me. Maybe that's something you're looking forward to in a game. If so, I do recommend it. I think it's a great fit for that. If you need a whole bunch of like gritty, chunky mechanics, not the game here. This plays fast, it plays loose, and it plays fun. But if that's what you want, then that's what you'll get here. All right, that's my review of Final Titan by NerdLab. Guys, if you have any questions, of course, let me know in the comments below. I'll be checking out the campaign too. I'm filming this before I've seen the campaign, but you better believe I'll be there. So super excited for this one. And if you have any questions, again, comments, or anything like that, let me know in the comments below. I'll be sure to read those. Thank you so much to all my patrons and YouTube members for making this channel possible so that I can speak freely about my honest opinion and not worry about stepping on too many toes or anything like that. I really, really appreciate the independence you guys bring me. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.